Myself, Prateek Maheshwari from PhysicsWallah. I'm co-founder at PhysicsWallah. Founded it in 2020 May, and we are fastest growing unicorn edtech of India. So I'm very optimistic about the entire landscape in India, because domestic consumption is increasing and India is becoming a prosperous country. So there are many domestic startups solving for domestic problems will come up in future. And the landscape is very promising. The regulators are very encouraging. There are a lot of private investments coming in India. The funding meter is gone now. The markets are opening up, and there is a very encouraging public market in India which allows us to solve domestic problems and list our companies. So the public market is even more lucrative than private market now. So they should solve for the real problems, and although it may take a longer route, but they should solve for a customer acquisition cost. They should solve for the real metrics of a business, which are retention, which are profitability, and funding will follow. And the funding landscape is very positive. There will be always funds for good companies. No matter how good and bad times are. So I believe if the fundamentals of a company is strong, then funding is a vanity metric. That will always happen. So see, when we start a company, there are a lot of gray areas. For example, I started a night food delivery company back in 2014. I was very young back then. But it was a gray in terms of regulation, whether I can do it or I cannot do it. So there are so many gray areas in fintech, in edtech, so there should be there should be a clarity or a single window where we can put up our questions, understand government bodies, and get approvals faster. And for new companies, government can set up a fund or a fund of fund where they can provide easy debts or some angel investments for early stage startups. They can partner with nationalized banks or private entities to set up this fund for entrepreneurs who are starting up. Because sometimes raising angel capital is very difficult, for these newbie startups. So this government can do. ESOP is one segment which we talk a lot about. There should be a policy change in ESOP, because the early stage employees of a company works as hard as founders, but they have to pay way more tax than founders. And as well as there's a double taxation issue as well in ESOPs. So this is a long wish list for the government. I can go on and on for that wish list. Yeah. One big advice is when they see such large companies, they feel these large companies will solve everything. For example, in education, I believe 10 more unicorns can born. When I started, there were some large companies back in 2016-17, and I was very demotivated whether I will be able to crack this sector or not. And I was very underconfident back then, but slowly and gradually we could able to make it. So take out on the real problems, focus on the customers, focus on your solutions, technology, outcomes, NPS of your students or customers, and forget about competition. Competition is for losers. You just focus on your customers, on your team, you will be able to make it. So that's my advice.